bringing on, for the first time ever, a 5-year Ottawa Senator, among other places, the Ducks, the Bruins, the Predators, Jason York. Woo!
No, Adam.
Sorry. Go ahead, please.
That's not what he's most famous for.
What is he most famous for, Steve?
My former coworker at ice surfing.
Yeah!
Hey, now we're talking.
Let's go.
Now we're talking.
The best show on the internet. Gosh darn it. We had Peter Mansbridge on that one time. It was great.
Gosh darn it, people like us Dangles.
They sure
like
do.
Oh, God. Am I the only guy that calls you Dangles, by the way?
You call... Yeah, pretty much. But I love it. I really do love it. I miss you. I miss you so much, Yorkie. I really do.
I appreciate it. Appreciate the love. Miss you too, buddy.
Yeah. Do you have any good memories from ice surfing, Jason, with Steve? Any story you can share?
Oh, God. I just remember when you got your new clothes, they gave you really tight-fitting clothes. and it was kind of...
I made them tight-fitting, Yorkie.
Yeah, very like tight-looking. Dangles had his own special look because he sat over on the Dangle desk.
Yeah.
And when Merrick and I did our thing, we'd go over to Dangles and he'd have to do something outrageous. But I always remember his clothes were way too tight.
A whole season working together, and that's what I generated.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Because that's when they put like TV clothes on you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't just, hey, you show up in the hoodie and everyth's relaxed. No, you were on Sportsnet, here's some TV clothes, and they were a little...
Yeah, you know what I remember most about Dangles? He got fat.
But that Dangle, he had this thing called the Dangle desk. And it was pretty good. No, it was good, man. That show never should have got canceled. It was something for everybody.
I thought so. I thought it was excellent and great and should have been on YouTube.
What's great is that, it shouldn't have been on Twitter.
No.
But what's great about it is that it is now on ESPN.
I know.
With Weeks and Buchagros and all those guys. I hope I pronounced his name right.
Yeah, they stole our bit, Yorkie. They stole our bit.
You know what? The future is podcasting anyways, fellas. We all know it.
Well,
absolutely.
Well,
Let's hear that.
And we're so glad you're here to talk about it. So Jason, the reason that, I kind of said to Steve, I'm like, we got to have Jason on because I was watching your tweets this past weekend about the Senators. Obviously, you played there for a long, long time. So really, really good teams that you played for. And the Senators are a really odd story because nobody had them last place in the division behind the Montreal Canadiens this deep into the season. There's no way. And in fact, I think most of us had them as an outside shot to make the playoffs. And
they have the skill.
They have the skill. They're spending to the cap. Like they can't even bring Shane Pinto back until they clear cap once he's available January 21st. I wanted to get your thoughts on what the hell's going on.
Well, a couple of things. So number one, when Michael Andlauer bought it, that whole process took so long. So when he finally got control of the team, it was really too late for him to do any changes. Because I really believe if he would have got it and the process maybe happened in the spring, he would have made some changes earlier. Because he eventually, we all know the story, he fired Pierre Dorion, and then DJ Smith got fired. But it was just the timing of the whole process, and then throw in the whole Pinto saga. It was just so much to deal with. But when you look at this team, and hey, listen, I'm guilty too, boys. I had them as a playoff team. I just think there was a huge overestimation where this team was, because this is when I look at teams and I evaluate teams, there's a couple of things the Ottawa Senators are really missing. If you look at good teams around the NHL, they have experience down the middle for the most part. So when you look at Ottawa's center ice position, you got Tim Stützle, who's born in the year 2002.
Oh, wow.
You got Josh. Yeah, how about that one? We talked about us feeling old. Then you got Josh Norris, who through injuries he hasn't even played 200 games in the league yet. Then Pinto, who was arguably their best two-way center, out with the gambling. So you take him out. Then you got throw Ridley Gregg. So down the middle, guys, they're one of the youngest teams in the NHL. Then throw in the fact, I think, and I'm biased, I'm a right shot D. Every team is looking for right shot D studs. Ottawa doesn't have one. They've got all these guys on the left side. They got Jacob Chikrin. They've got Sanderson, who's going to be a real good player, also a really young player, and they got Thomas Chabot. They're missing that really good right shot D who can play defensively, and they're just way too young down the middle. The way Dorian constructed this team, he spent all the money and allocated all the dollars to the wing. And the wing is probably the least of your important positions on an NHL hockey team. And I just think the Ottawa Senators are flawed the way they're built. And it's going to take time. And I think everybody just overestimated where they're going to be at. And they had injuries and goaltending, all those other things too. But it's just, for me, it's youth down the middle and right shot D presence.
So their goaltending's been getting shredded all season.
Oh,
one of the first things Jacques Martin did when he joined the Sens was he sort of threw goaltending a bone. And he said, the team's not playing well enough in front of them. They're good goaltenders. You played D for a long time. Is there something to what he's saying? Is this team, you want your goalies to give you a chance to win, but is the team not giving the goalies that opportunity?
I would say when the Senators give up chances, they give up $10. And it's like, I don't know if you guys saw the game last night against Calgary. They had a chance to win that game. And all of a sudden, when they make mistakes in their own zone, they make big ones. And I would say both goaltenders haven't played well this year for sure. They got to own it too. You look at some other teams where their goaltenders bailed them out. Their goalies just don't bail them out, but they don't help them out either. Here's the other thing, guys, too, with Ottawa. Look what happens to goaltenders when they leave Ottawa.
They get better.
Well, they become all-stars.
Yeah. Yeah.
They didn't have Joey Decord, but they lost him in the expansion draft. Well, he's in Seattle right now, and hey, guess what? He's their best goaltender. And guys, it's been a really tough place for goaltenders to play. And it's ironic, on our podcast yesterday, we had on Damian Rhodes and Ron Tugnut.
Oh, yeah.
Two old school Ottawa goaltenders. And I asked them, I said, guys, is there something to playing in a Canadian market? Toronto's a great example, right? There's so much pressure when you play in a Canadian market as a goaltender because all eyes are on you, right? I personally think there is. I just think some guys just can't handle playing in a Canadian market, that the pressure just eats them up. That's what I think about it.
So the Sens have changed the owner. It passed away. They got a new owner. They changed the GM. They've changed the head coach. They changed everything around the team except the players. At what point is it time to move some pieces of the young core and get new bodies in there?
Right now?
Oh, it is. Okay.
We've reached that point.
I think he's right. Yeah. Well,
listen, guys, I say this all the time. DJ Smith took a ton of heat when he was coaching, and sure, he's got to own some of it. But at the end of the day, it always comes back to the players. Those are the guys on the ice, and I said earlier, they're young down the middle, and that's going to take a little longer than people had anticipated. But I just think they're at a point now where I actually do think they need to move somebody. They need a shakeup. They need to grab guys' attention, and you're kind of out of cards to play right now. Like, there's not really many cards left in the deck that you can play to shoot a little shot of adrenaline into these guys, right?
Well, and that kind of brings up the culture shift, because there's I think Sens fans, from what I'm seeing, are kind of talking about there's a culture issue in there. Whether that's, I mean, we saw Daniel Alfredson yelling at one of the players who was just basically out there for a good pregame skate in the middle of the game. Yeah, and
I saw that.
Yeah, and so you've got, I mean, it's great to have Alfie on the bench. Jacques Martin, by all accounts, and maybe you could talk about this, if you're not playing well, is not exactly the most fun guy to play for, and that's probably a good thing. The players loved DJ Smith. Is that part of the problem?
Well, I kind of put this analogy. Right now, the team's playing like a bunch of guys that have lost their dog. Like, they just, you can tell body language, looks like they're not having any fun. Jacques and DJ are two polar different, opposite personalities. Jacques, who I had for 5 years, is more reserved. He's quiet. He's methodical. DJ's a great motivator. He's a great person, a great guy, and I just think those players really liked him. But at the end of the day, it's a business, and if you're relying on a coach to motivate you, there's something wrong. Mm-hmm. There's something definitely wrong. So, it's not coaching. Like for me, it's not coaching. Like, and I do the one point you did say earlier with the culture, and that's why I think it might be time. I don't think it might. I think it is time to probably do a move that's going to send a message to the group that this just isn't acceptable. And you're going to see. I think you're going to see one of the key pieces of the young core, as they call it, get moved.
One of the things I've been obsessed with lately is you're watching these Sens games, and they're not getting blown out on a lot of nights. Like they're in it, and one guy you see just begging, pleading with his voice and with his body every night to wake these guys up is Brady Krug. And it just doesn't feel like they're building a team around him. Matthew Tkachuk, who is very similar, matches the Florida Panthers perfectly. Yeah. It just doesn't feel like Brady Krug.
But he didn't match the Flames, right? They were quote unquote tired of his antics.
Well, they didn't, we don't want to have to fight because of you. And I just feel the same thing happening in Ottawa. Is there anything to that in your opinion?
You're exactly right. How many times are we going to say that, Dangles?
I'd rather you say that than clothes don't fit.
Well, think about your point. Think about your point there. Yeah. What are the Florida Panthers? The Florida Panthers are Matthew Tkachuk. Like, how hard is Sam Bennett to play against? Remember the playoffs last year, guys?
Brutal.
I can't forget.
He was an animal. Like, and then you look at, I know Cousins, everybody hates him, but he's hard to play against. Barkov's Barkov's arguably the best two-way centerman. You hear this term all the time, right? 200-foot player.
Yep.
The Florida Panthers are filled with 200-foot players, and they're also filled with guys that you said, like a Brady Krug, like a Matthew Tkachuk, that make it hard on the other team's D. So one of the things NHL teams do all the time in pregame meetings, it's actually comical. It's the same thing because everybody thinks teams strategize. This is what teams say before every game. We got to make it hard on the other team's D. That's the game plan today. We got to make it hard on the other team's D. Well, how many guys on the Ottawa Senators roster, besides Brady Krug, make it hard on the other team's D? Pretty hard to find some, right?
Yeah.
Like it's...
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the Leafs in the playoffs certain years. It's like you just kind of roll them, right? Like they're not physical.
Like probably like their next physical guy is Ridley Gregg. Like that plays in the top 9. They have a kid, Parker Kelly, that's playing really well right now, but he's on the 4th line. But when you play a team of guys that just don't play the same style, like that's the thing. Ottawa doesn't have an identity right now. The identity used to be Brady Krug, hard to play against. We're gonna make it tough for you guys. And now when you play the Ottawa Senators, it's just what is it? And that's an issue right now. That why I think they probably need to make a move. They need to find an identity, and they need to find it fast.
I wondered, Jason, when you look at what the Senators' identity has been in the past, what should the identity be? Like, should they be the Brady Tkachuks? Like kind of like the Florida Panthers or the Matthew Tkachuks? Are they a little bit more of the finesse team that the finesse teams that we saw with Yashin and Alfredson, and you were on those teams and you're right up there with them. But I mean, like, it's like they, and then later on Spezza, Heatley, those teams were really sort of finesse driven with some toughness, Chris Neal and that. What should the Ottawa Senators be shooting for when they make this move, whatever this move is?
I think to be a faster team, because I think right now they're too slow.
Okay.
A faster team that's hard to play against and that's able to play a 200-foot game. And those things right now, they're missing all 3 of those elements. And that's really why, when you look at good teams around the league, they play fast, they're hard to play against, and they don't cheat. That's basically what a 200-foot player is. A 200-foot player doesn't cheat the game. And you look at Ottawa, a lot of guys were getting points before because they're cheating. Like when you're cheating offensively all the time, and you guys have seen it in Toronto when some of the things aren't going well, guys cheat. And you can get away with it in the NHL during the regular season sometimes, but once playoff comes, and Ottawa still has to get there, the teams that cheat will never have success. So That's what they need to get to. Just a team that doesn't cheat. Listen, it's hard to find Brady Kachucks. Like you're never going to get a team of Brady Kachucks.
Yeah.
Matthew Kachucks or a team of Austin Matthews, or everybody can score whatever he's going to get, 60, 70 goals this year. It's just, but you can be a responsible 200-foot player. You just have to buy in and sacrifice a little offense, right? That's what it takes.
So you got to shake this team up. You got to send a message. Who's the player? Like, in your opinion, it doesn't necessarily makes them better right away, but it grabs the team by the collar and says, we are not screwing around.
Yeah. Well, I guess you got to start. I always start this way, Steve. Who am I not trading? I'm not trading Jake Sanderson.
Okay.
I know Tim Stützle's taking a lot of heat right now, but I'm not going to trade Tim Stützle. He's a 2002 young player. Those guys don't grow on trees, and I'm not trading Brady Tkachuk.
Okay.
After that, I think you take your pick. I would have to be blown away to trade Claude Giroux, because I think he's such an important player. He's not part of the young core, but man, he's, of all the players, guys, he's been the best Ottawa Senator this year. He's been really good. But so then you look at the next guys. You look at, maybe it's a Josh Norris, maybe it's a Thomas Chabot, maybe it's one of those guys. I think it's going to depend on what the other team is going to give you. But if you're just going to trade a guy on your fourth line or your third line, it's not going to do anything. It's going to have to be one of those guys that's an important piece right now.
Because the names we've brought up have sort of been just picking around the edges, Tarasenko and Kubalik.
Well, he's getting traded no matter. Yeah. Tarasenko's getting traded no matter what. Okay. Kubalik's going, like, if they can find somebody to take him. Brandstrom will probably be traded at the deadline as well. But you're not. Those are expected moves. It's the one where you're like I can remember, guys. I'll take you back to when I was in Anaheim. We were terrible. Like, we were so bad, and then we traded for Timo Solani. and listen, we traded everybody. And here's the other thing: everybody says you can't trade young guys, you can't trade franchise potential guys. We traded Chad Kilger and Oleg Tverdovsky, two guys that were top 5 picks overall for Teemu. But when Teemu came, our team just took off. We didn't make the playoffs. We went right up to the last game of the regular season. We had to end up tying for the last spot. Didn't get in, but it just kind of changed our whole moxie and our whole aura of how we thought about ourselves as a team. And it took us from here up to there. But sometimes you got to do brash things, guys? And when you do, and you have the balls to do it, it sends a message to the team.
Oh yeah.
Do you know Steve Staios?
I do, actually. Yeah, I played a lot against Steve. We're the same era. Like, we're not buddies or anything, but we know each other. Good person, smart guy.
Is he brash?
Well, we'll soon see, won't we?
Okay.
We'll soon see.
All right, that's fair. Now, listen, you had some really great years with those Senators teams. And I wanted to ask you, because I think it's been so long, right, since that 2017 run that was so special, right? It really was the Erik Karlsson, Mike Hoffman, Super Bowl pass. What's it like to win in Ottawa? And the follow-up to that is, what's it like, or what was your favorite moment in your career in Ottawa? Like, what's the moment that stands out to you? Because there needs to be, as much as we're Leaf fans, like, I don't get any pleasure out of the Ottawa Senators being bad. I want them to be good so the Leafs can beat them when they're good. Even though the Ottawa Senators still beat the Leafs right now. They always play their best game against the Leafs. Yeah. What was your time like there when they were winning, and what's your favorite particular moment?
Okay, well, it's easy. I'll tell you guys a couple things. First thing I'll tell you is I almost became a Toronto Maple Leaf.
What?
I thought I was going to become a Toronto Maple Leaf. I was a free agent after my 5th year in Ottawa, and my agent at the time was Pat Morris. And Pat called me and he says, Toronto's coming to the table with a 4-year deal. He goes, I forget what the dollar. I'm like, perfect. I'd love it. I go, my mom's not going to be happy because she hated the Leafs, but I'd love to do it. So I don't know if you guys remember, later in that day, they signed Alexander McGillney. Then Pat calls me back. He's like, yeah, they're out of money. You're not going to Toronto anymore. That was my I ended up signing I ended up going to Anaheim instead, because Toronto, that's what happens on UFA day. There's all the dominoes fall, and unfortunately they went that way. But easy for me, favorite moment as an Ottawa Senator. I'm from Ottawa, guys. And I was on that team that made the playoffs for the first time ever. It was unreal.
Wow.
We had played the Buffalo Sabres. It was back then it was an 80-game schedule. It took 80 games, and we had to beat Dominic Hasek in game 80 to get in.
Wow.
We beat them 1-0. Hasek was unbelievable, guys. I told this story yesterday on our pod. We found out after that Hasek was out the night before too. One of our players, a Czech guy, Frank Musel, took him out. They went drinking, and Frankie came into the pregame skate. He goes, "Don't worry, boys. I took Hasek out last night. He ain't playing tonight." We go out for warm-up. Fucking Hasek's dressed. I'm like, what the hell, Frankie?
Only allowed one goal, almost seals it.
He was hungover, and friggin' it took us till Steve Duchesne scored a goal late in the game.
Wow.
But I'll never forget it. The noise in that building, guys, in Ottawa, it was electric. It was unbelievable. That's by far my favorite moment. Unfortunately, playoffs never went that well for me. I did make the playoffs all 5 of my years in Ottawa, but I think the Leafs took us down a couple times. And yeah, those weren't fun days, but easily for me, guys, that was my most exciting time. That first time was just very special.
Yeah, it kind of reminds us of like when the Leafs missed the playoffs for almost 10 years in a row and Connor Brown scored that goal. Like, you know, and it was like, oh, we're going. This is great. And Jason, listen, we really appreciate you making time, and I hope this isn't the last time. We'd love to have you back. For anybody that wants to know, what podcast can they find you on?
They can find me. It's on all platforms. It's called Coming in Hot. It's myself, Bobby Ryan, Brent Wallace, the three of us.
I'm sorry, you mean local podcaster Brent Wallace?
Local podcaster. Yeah, he changed his Twitter handle. Local podcaster. Hey, it's the same, guys. It's like we have a lot of fun. We talk Sens most of the time, but it's we're usually on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, all platforms. And I got to say, podcasting, guys, like I said earlier, I think it's the future. I really loved it. I've enjoyed it. It's just a much more looser, relaxed, and freer way to get your point across. It's been fantastic.
Beautiful. Well, Jason, thanks so much for joining us, and maybe around trade deadline we'll have you back, talk a little bit about Senators trade deadline moves and
that Tarasenko trade that's coming down.
Yeah. I don't know what they're going to get for him. But anyway,
Miss you, Yorkie.
Yeah, well,
thanks, Yorkie.
Yeah. Anytime, fellas.